Hello, everyone, and welcome to another exciting version of Chip Talks Health. I'll bet you, some of you guys have bloating. I'll bet you have gastric upset when you eat certain foods. If you don't, I'll bet you know somebody in your family who does. This is a very, very common problem that we're going to talk about today, something called SIBO, small intestinal bowel overgrowth. And SIBO is caused or can be caused by a good guy, a guy called Lactobacillus acidophilus. So if you take probiotics, you are likely taking Lactobacillus acidophilus. If you eat dairy, you are likely getting you absolutely are getting Lactobacillus acidophilus, as he is one of the guys that's in dairy that helps dairy ferment and do things like that. So lactobacillus is something that we overconsume in our diets via dairy and via probiotics and via commonly used fermenter, let's say. And what happens to us is that in our stomach, over time, we begin to lose the ability to fill our stomach with stomach acid. Okay. So, and if you can't fill your stomach with stomach acid, you really are not disinfecting yourself. We've all seen the TikTok videos. And again, if you're wanting to learn about your health, TikTok is probably not your number one choice. It is a little confusing right now, I would just say. So sorry to digress here, but it is a little bit confusing if you are wanting to learn about your health, because there's so much crap out there. So how do you understand who has authority and who is actually telling you the truth or higher truth versus who is filling your mind with mush? Well, again, AI is a pretty good tool, isn't it? And I would encourage you to run anything that I tell you through an AI system. And again, you might have to drill into it a little bit to get to the truths that I'm trying to express to you, but you'll find those truths and it will back me up. So anyway, basically Lactobacillus acidophilus is something that causes this small intestinal bowel overgrowth. There are other bacteria that can do it. Dementia fragilis is one that overgrows quite a bit. He can cause IBS and Crohn's. But lacto can cause a bunch of stuff. So we're going to talk about that in a second, but let's talk about the why here. So back to the why. So we all over time, and this could be due to infection, it could be due to malnutrition, but there's reasons why this happens. And there's reasons or ways we can get all this process restarted. So don't freak out if you've got all this going on, because I'll give you the solution at the end, or at least kind of what we have crafted as a solution at the end that's working very well. So it's always good to, you want positive feedback, and that's what we get from our testing population. But anyway, here's what happens is that over time, when we're young, we fill up our stomach completely with stomach acid. And again, back to the TikTok video. So we've all seen these TikTok videos of somebody, I think I'll take ramen noodles and put them under a microscope and see if there's bugs in them, right? And there's bugs in everything that we eat. Every time you take a breath, you're breathing in bacteria and all manner of viruses and all kinds of crap. So the way we would defend ourselves is with our immune system, but a giant piece of the immune system is your ability to generate stomach acid, okay? If you can't generate stomach acid, you don't have any way to disinfect what you're eating. And that's what we want to have happen. We want basically the stuff that we eat to go into basically the disinfecting soup that is stomach acid. And stomach acid will kill bacteria, will kill viruses, it will kill parasites, worms, oos, eggs, everything. So stomach acid is our biggest immune defense, and it's how we keep stuff that's outside from getting inside. But guess what the bugs like to do? If I infect you, again, a great strategy for me is to shut off your stomach acid, isn't it? And that's what appears to happen is over time, our stomach acid gets less and less and less and less. Now, we still have stomach acid. You have to have stomach acid to digest meat, and you have to have stomach acid to digest basically proteins and fats. And you also need some stomach acid to digest carbohydrates. Again, carbohydrates are not essential to your function. You don't need them. And we're going to talk about how they contribute to this problem in a second. Fats are king for you, and proteins are super essential. So fats and proteins are super essential. But anyway, we release stomach acid when we eat in order to break apart these things. And so we're trying to break this complicated food down into electrons, really, but smaller and smaller and smaller particles until we have them down to, let's say, the molecular or electron type level. And that's what your body is working hard to do. And stomach acid is a part of that, but it's also a part of your defense, your immune defense, how you protect yourself, all of that. So if you're only filling up half your tank, if you're only filling up half of your stomach with stomach acid, what does that do to the upper part of your stomach, which is attached to your small intestines and your colon and all that? It leaves it wide open for colonization. And there's certain superbugs that like to get in there and get into your upper GI and kind of upper stomach area and colonize it. Lactobacillus acidophilus would be one, and he is actually comorbid with another guy called H. pylori, and we'll talk about H. pylori in a second. Now, but anyway, lacto will expand in this area, and he will colonize your upper digestive, and that is exactly what small intestinal bowel overgrowth is. Now, when we at Neighborly Wellness, we have a system called Bioresonance. It's not a diagnostic. I could never diagnose you. It's not a medical thing. It's kind of an informational thing, but it can sense via frequency where lactobacillus might be overgrown. And so we see or at least indicated by this non-diagnostic machine, that lactobacillus acidophilus is overgrown in 99% of the people that we see. So this is a common problem. This is more of a problem than H. pylori is right now, which we probably see in 80% of the people that we scan, and a bigger problem than even Helmus. And we probably see parasites, worms, Helmus in about 95% of people that we scan. But we see SIBO in almost everyone. Now SIBO, and again, I would encourage you to download an AI tool, validate what I'm about to tell you. But SIBO is strongly correlated with obesity. It's strongly correlated with type 2 diabetes. So it's not something that you want. It's definitely correlated with hormone imbalance. So if you're a man and you've been measured with low testosterone, well, again, God is a perfect engineer. If you have testes, if you have gonads, then you are making testosterone. There's just something that's altering that testosterone as soon as you make it. And lactobacillus acidophilus would be a guy who would drive you towards estrogen dominance, which would mean to convert all of your testosterone to estrogen. So he really drives people to estrogen dominance. And estrogen dominance is, you kind of have two sides to your immune system. So you've got kind of a see it, kill it side, and then you've got a little bit more intelligent side that's more antibody driven. And this estrogen dominance will drive you toward that antibody driven response and take you away from the killer response. And the reason for that is kind of obvious in how we're constructed. If you're a female, a killer response will kill an embryo. You don't want that to happen. So when we get pregnant, we're basically going to this estrogen dominance, which forces you into this more intelligent antibody type response, but does leave you open for infection by certain things. So this guy will drive you that way. So he'll drive you toward estrogen dominance because that favors him, because again, you need that killer response in order to kill him. So he can do a lot of harm. He can absolutely drive chronic inflammation. And chronic inflammation is why 80% of us die. So again, is he responsible for that entire 80%? No, but he's responsible for a large part of that 80%. So indirectly, what I'm telling you is he causes heart attacks. He causes kidney failure. He causes liver failure. He causes basically the things that happen when we're just under constant pressure from chronic inflammation. Okay, so not something that you want to have. We don't want to have this happen. Let's talk about we see three major infections in people. This SIBO, caused by Lactobacillus acidophilus. We see H. pylori, and we're going to talk about what that feels like versus SIBO. And then we also see parasite or helminth infections, and we're going to talk about what that feels like in regard to SIBO. Okay, so what are SIBO symptoms? This Lactobacillus acidophilus overgrowth, how would you know you had it? Excess gas, bloating, and distension, especially after you eat carbohydrates or smoothies. Anything with fermented food in it, like yogurt, milk, anything with dairy is going to cause excess gas, bloating, and distension. Okay, but carbs, dairy, and fermented foods and structured fibers are going to cause this to happen the worst, because those are what these guys ferment on. You're like throwing gasoline on their little pyro fire. They're going to cause some burning and acid-like pain because these guys do produce lactic acid. They're definitely going to drive food intolerance. So there's going to be certain things that you feel like you can't eat because when you eat them, it's so unbelievably uncomfortable. And that's going to be likely sugars and fibers, maybe not so much on the sugar, but definitely on the fiber end. And then you're going to feel fatigued and you're going to have poor nutrient absorption. You can't, if your upper GI is all infected and inflamed and staticky and crazy, how are you going to absorb through those tissues? You know, think about something on the outside of you that's super inflamed and red and puffy and all that. Does that work like normal skin? No. And the same thing happens inside of you. So if something's inflamed, it's not going to have the same normal processes to be able to identify nutrients and pull those out of the soup that's coming by it. There's no way. Okay. So you're going to be malnourished no matter what. Certainly if you have some kind of gut infection, you're absolutely going to be malnourished. You're not going to be able to absorb protein. And that's a super important part of this whole picture. And once stuff kind of moves beyond your gate, you know, which is stomach acid, you know, what other ways do you have to defend against it? And protein is a way, is a, you know, system that fuels your immune system, let's say, or powers the verbs in your immune system. So that's what SIBO feels like. Okay. So this is what this Lactobacillus acidophilus overgrowth feels like. Well, what does something like an H. pylori infection feel like? It's going to be different. It's subtle, but it's going to be different. And so, and I talk to people all the time who have H. pylori infections because I'm always trying to get the feedback on how they're experiencing it. But it's burning. Okay. So pylori would be, now you can have some burning with SIBO, but it's not like the pylori burning. And the pylori burning can be intense. A lot of people who have pylori or, you know, and it's SIBO both kind of have to manage their diet down to a few foods because it's so uncomfortable. But the SIBO would be the bloating and distension and gas. The pylori would be more the burning. And pylori really lights up at night when your stomach is more empty. And so when people with severe, let's say more severe pylori, when they lay down at night, they'll get a lot of burning and they'll also burp up stomach acid. So if you're burping up stomach acid, you have H. pylori. If you've been told you have GERD, if you've been told you have ulcers, if you've been told that, you know, stuff like that, if you're burping up stomach acid, you have H. pylori. Now, H. pylori is severe, and it's severe in a different way than SIBO is. H. pylori can cause cancer. And if you're to the point where you're having to take Tums or taking baking soda or taking the pharma drug, lisomeprazole, or whatever the heck it is, the proton pump inhibitor. So if you're to the point where you're having to take those, you are this close to pancreatic cancer. And pancreatic cancer is a death sentence. So please pick up the phone and call us. You know, happy to do a consult. We do free consults. But get in front of that if you've got, or if somebody you love has those type issues, because again, that one will get worse. It won't get better and it will kill you. Okay. SIBO will get worse and worse and worse and might cause you to be obese. Type 2, it'll eventually kill you, but not from cancer and not in the same way that H. pylori will. but the difference is burning versus bloating. Okay. So hopefully everybody got that. The last category that we see very common in people that might be, let's say, confused with SIBO is parasites. And parasites are called helminths, hook, round, and pinworm, tapeworm, you know, any wormy like thing, anything that's got, let's say, a mouth is going to be kind of in the helminth category. And they cause a little bit different problems. Now, we all get infected with these, and I'm seeing, you know, 95% of the people that we see have some kind of helminth infection. So this is super common. We deworm our dogs, our cows, our pigs, our sheep, our cats every 6 months for these very infections, and we never deworm ourselves. And this is something that is missed in medicine. I mean, when you go for your general checkup, do you get a worm check? No, you don't, but you worm check your cow, you worm check your horse, you worm check your pig, you worm check your sheep. So we all should be deworming about every 6 months. And even back in the day, so we had this way, we've been here before. We were here before in ancient Egypt, and we had all this stuff figured out. We had it figured out how to beat these guys, okay? And we had it ancient Egypt. We had this also figured out in the 1850s. It was why we would take bitters, and you know, it's probably the genesis of where a salad came from, because you would eat your bitters about 30 minutes before you eat a meal. So you would be eating arugula or, you know, some bitter, you know, dandelion or something like that before you ate your meal to stimulate bile and to stimulate stomach acid. Okay. And that is protective against these guys. They can't infect you unless their eggs can get in you. And the only way that their eggs can get in you is through your stomach. Okay. So some of these guys can burrow in through skin, but anyway, that doesn't really matter. Let's talk about what they feel like. So these guys are going to somewhat feel like SIBO. So it's a little bit of a confusing thing as to which one of these guys you might have. And you could have both. So don't discount this. But what helminths are going to feel like is intestinal cramping, bloating, but not kind of to the extreme of SIBO. So you might feel this a little bit of pain, a little bit of bloating, a little bit of cramping, but not like so much like you have to quit eating, okay, or change your diet. You might go through cycles of constipation or diarrhea. These guys like to hold on to food for a longer time, and so they'll slow down your motility, but at times they'll also speed it up, okay? So you might go through back and forth. With SIBO, it's going to be kind of the same thing. So it's going to be slow, fast, slow, fast. So that isn't really a big tell on what helminths are. You're going to have weird appetite shifts, though. So with a helminth, you're going to either feel hungry all the time or not hungry at all. So something like a tapeworm, you know, is going to kind of alter your appetite to not be so hungry. Something like a roundworm or a pinworm or hookworm is going to likely cause you to increase your calorie count and make you more hungry. But these guys can play around with those mechanisms, okay? So you're also going to feel fatigue, anemia, and weight loss. And anemia is because some of these guys directly suck your blood. Now, if you have teeth grinding, if you're having itchy skin, and if you're having anal itching, certainly these are associated with pinworms, and that is a type of helminth. If you have a generally run down immune system, again, that's what these guys do. They're forcing you over to this type 2, you know, more antibody response rather than a killer response. So that's kind of what helminths feel like. All right. So SIBO overall is going to be bloating right after meals, and that's going to be especially a carbohydrate heavy meal. It's going to be pain and discomfort in the upper abdomen. It's going to be a fear of food. So you might be scared to eat certain things, and every bite might increase your anxiety and stress and fear. You're going to have constipation or diarrhea, depending on whether the bugs that you're creating create methane or hydrogen. So it just kind of depends on what they're outgassing. But that's what's causing you the bloating is the gas. And you're going to have brain fog and fatigue. So what we've done is we see this as such a common problem that we've built a bundle in TrueMedX, and our bundles are a way to save money on if you need multiple products. And you definitely, if you've got a SIBO overgrowth or you have H. pylori, but this bundle would apply to you, but we built it for SIBO. Okay. And so what has it got in it? The first thing it's got in it is our digest product. And our digest product would be similar to what they used to do in ancient Egypt or in the 1850s, where they 30 minutes before we ate. And that's what our digest does. It stimulates all those same processes naturally. It increases bile and it increases stomach acid and kind of gets you ready to eat, but also gets that disinfecting power up of all of your, bile and stomach acid. So it's increasing that. So it's increasing your immune system's ability to disinfect things before they get in you. And that's kind of what we want to have happen. Our gut restore product is loaded with berberine, garlic. It's got killer stuff in it, let's say, that will directly have action against H. pylori and against Lactobacillus acidophilus. So it will begin to basically cut down the colonization and wipe out these bacterial colonies that have happened in your upper GI, while at the same time we're creating stomach acid with the digest. So we found that this is to ultimately preventative. And the last piece that you need really is a heal up piece. And our guts turn over about every 3 to 5 days. So again, if you can get in front of this and get in front of your reinfection cycle, then in 3 to 5 days, we can, completely change the whole surface area of your gut. But one of the things that you really need to rebuild and repair gut tissue is glutamine. So we have a bunch of glutamine in our protein powder product that we call Essentials. And we've just reshaped this Essentials product to really look at aminos that you might be deficient in if you're infected with something. So we're just assuming that you're infected with something, and we account for that in our amino acid supplementation. So this bundle is super good and super targeted towards SIBO, and it also works for H. pylori. So same solution for H. pylori or SIBO. So if you have the burning, and these guys go together a lot. I mean, they both colonize the upper gut. And so that's what we're trying to scrub out. The Helmus, we've got another solution for. We've actually got a deworm product. And that product we've built to get them all, so it won't miss anything. A lot of you guys have heard about ivermectin and fenbendazole to deworm, and those are great ways to deworm. Those are pharmaceutical products. Ivermectin won a Nobel Peace Prize in 2017, so it's a good, safe product, but it'll miss some things, and it seems to miss roundworms mainly. To tapeworm frequently, and worms just seem resilient, let's say, to fenbendazole and ivermectin. So even if you're taking those, you're likely still leaving your gate a little bit open for some stuff. The way that we've designed our deworm product is we tap them all. So we'll hit all these guys, and we'll also get rid of their eggs and get them when they cycle, and that's what we're trying to do. So we have tried to give you guys a bunch of tools to defend your gut and your gut biome, because that's where we see most disease coming from. And that's where we see we're malnourished. And a lot of that malnourishment comes from SIBO, comes from small intestinal bowel overgrowth. So let's talk about some things that you might be doing that are hurting you. And again, if you've got your chat tool out or your Grok tool out or your Gemini tool out or whatever little AI you use, you might validate these things that I'm telling you. But SIBO comes from, basically SIBO is going to be worsened by feeding it. And how do you feed these bacteria that cause it? Lactobacillus acidophilus. Well, Lactobacillus acidophilus is in almost every single probiotic. So if you have this and you're taking a probiotic, I would strongly recommend that you stop, because you're throwing gasoline on a fire. We've all been told about the health properties of carbohydrates. Let me give you some truth. So carbohydrates are mostly sugar. Even that beautiful raw broccoli is fiber and sugar. Okay. And are those essential to you? No, they are not essential to your function at all. You can go the rest of your life and never eat another carbohydrate. Ask Chat, ask Gemini, ask Grok. They are not essential. Okay. They're a good source of vitamins. They're a good source of fiber, but they are not essential. So carbohydrates, and especially the more structured carbohydrates like raw vegetables, will also feed SIBO. Gasoline on a fire. Okay. Gasoline on a fire. Any fermented foods, smoothies, yogurt, kimchi, kefir, sauerkraut, pickles, pickled onions, pickle, vinegar will feed this issue. Now, apple cider vinegar is acidic. It will help with this issue, but acid is what you need to get rid of this. And the last thing that will really hurt you are dairy products. So almost all dairy products have some kind of lactobacillus acidophilus in them. And again, that's just throwing gasoline on this fire. And this is a very prevalent fire, okay? Very prevalent fire. There are lots of different things that can infect you, okay? So we've talked about three, and these are the three major things that we see, but SIBO, again, is kind of chief among them, and we're seeing that in almost everyone that we look at, indicated, let's say. But there's lots of different things that can infect you, and so all of these kind of feel different. Again, they'll all eventually kill you from chronic inflammation, and chronic inflammation will take out your heart, your kidneys, your liver. So they'll also eventually kill you, but they just feel different. And they're, pylori is a quick mover. The other ones are a little bit slower movers. So learning to identify kind of what feedback we get when we eat certain foods is going to be super important in the future to help you guys determine exactly what you might be infected with. And right now it's kind of these three major things, right? So gut dysfunction isn't random, but God is a perfect engineer. If you're having some kind of gut dysfunction, you've likely got a third party involved. So you're likely infected with something. It could be malnutrition, but that's unlikely if you're having dysbiosis in your gut. But infection leads to malnutrition. And if you're chronically inflamed, there are things called conditional amino acids, and they're really important to how we function. If you're healthy, if you're not infected with anything, and you're getting all 9 amino acids, then you're going to build these conditional amino acids very easily. But as we get chronically inflamed and as we get infected, we have a greater demand and need for the 9 essential amino acids because we're having to defend ourselves. We're having to send out tanks and airplanes and all kinds of stuff to fight our battles. So we use the essential resources that we need to build conditional aminos on defense. So we don't build conditional aminos. And let's say the conditional aminos that are in collagen would be a prime example. So what do? You rob collagen in order to build basically the things that you rob aminos, let's say, from collagen in order to build those conditional aminos that you need to do other things. So that's not a situation that we want to be in. So what I'm saying is infection leads to malnutrition, and malnutrition leads to more infection. And that's just a horrible loop that we don't want to be in. We want to break that cycle, and we break that cycle with proper nutrition and then picking off these guys point by point as they infect us. But we've got to have proper nutrition first. Otherwise, we're just, you're just going to be constantly in a state of reinfection. So that's why we talk so much about the importance of nutrition, the importance of omega-3, omega-6 balance, vitamins, aminos, all of those things, because they're critical in how you defend yourself. And without those things, you're going to be weaker and you're going to get infected and you're going to die of one of those infections eventually. Anyway, we'll leave it there for today. So if you've enjoyed this episode, absolutely give us a like and subscribe. If you think you might have SIBO or H. pylori or Helminth, then look at TrueMedX and look at what we've got to offer there. We have a bundle. We have the SIBO bundle that has our gut restore, our digest, and our protein powder, which is our essentials, and you'll save some money if you get that bundle. Anyway, we'll leave it there for today. Thank you guys, and we'll see you back next week for another exciting version of Chip Talks Health. If you deal with bloating, discomfort after meals, or food sensitivities, don't ignore these. It could be SIBO. That's why we created the TrueMedX SIBO Support Bundle. It combines Digest to boost stomach acid, Gut Restore to target bacterial overgrowth, and Essentials to rebuild your gut lining with critical amino acids. Together, they reset digestion, reduce overgrowth, and repair your gut. Grab the SIBO Support Bundle today at TrueMedX and take the first step toward real gut relief.